Alexander Laurent, a prosperous French businessman, is now at the helm of an international luxury company. At 50, he had traveled the world, amassed a considerable fortune, and built an empire. Yet, despite his success, a part of him remained inexorably tied to his past, to a land that had seen him grow: Africa. Over 40 years ago, Alexander spent his childhood in a small coastal town in West Africa. His parents, expatriate French diplomats, were constantly busy and often absent. It was Amina, his nanny, who played the role of mother and protector. She raised him with love, rocking him with traditional songs, teaching him to dance to the sounds of local drums, and introducing him to African cuisine. She was everything to him, and the memories of her comforting arms were deeply embedded in his heart. However, life took him away from this world. At the age of 10, his family returned to France, and Alexander never saw Amina again, nor the land that he held so dear. His memories gradually faded over the years, buried beneath the weight of responsibilities and professional obligations. Today, as he stepped off the plane for his first trip to Africa in decades, he felt a strange mixture of nostalgia and nervousness. The warm, humid air, the familiar smells of spices and tropical flowers, awakened a flood of emotions he thought were lost. Everything felt both foreign and familiar. He was there for business, but deep inside, he knew that this trip was more than just a professional errand. It was a personal pilgrimage. As Alexander walked through the streets of the city, his heart beat faster with each step. The landscapes he rediscovered reminded him of forgotten fragments of memories: children playing in the dust, bustling markets overflowing with exotic fruits, the melodic laughter of vendors. But something had changed. The Africa of his childhood, which he had perhaps unconsciously idealized, had evolved. The once dirt roads were now paved, and new buildings had sprouted where traditional huts once stood. Yet, despite these transformations, the essence of the land, its vibrant pulse, remained. On his way to the village where he had grown up, Alexander sank into his thoughts. He thought of Amina, the woman who had been so much more than just a nanny to him. She had given him warmth and attention that he hadn't always received from his parents, often too absorbed in their professional responsibilities.
How was she now?
Was she still alive? Would she forgive him for letting so many years pass without seeking to find her? As he reached the entrance of the village, Alexander was overwhelmed by a deep emotion. The landscape seemed frozen in time: the clay huts, the palm trees gently swaying in the warm breeze, and the green hills surrounding the small community. Every detail reminded him of his childhood. He wandered through the village, trying to orient himself among unfamiliar faces. But the energy of the place remained intact. When he shyly asked the villagers if they still knew Amina, they pointed him toward a house at the end of a small road. His hand trembled slightly as he approached the door of this modest home, adorned with flowers and handcrafted objects. Alexander hesitated, torn between the excitement of seeing the woman he had loved so much and the fear that the years had created a rift between them. He gently knocked on the door. A deep silence followed. Then, slowly, the door opened. A woman, her face marked by the years, appeared in the doorway. Her hair was gray, her skin wrinkled, but her gaze, filled with tenderness and wisdom, remained unchanged. It was Amina. Alexander was overwhelmed by a wave of memories. "Amina," he whispered, his voice breaking with emotion. The old woman's face seemed to brighten as she recognized the man who had once been a little boy, the child she had taken under her wing. Tears shimmered in her eyes. "Alexander, my little boy," she said softly, as if she had been waiting for him all her life. Without saying another word, she embraced him, and Alexander felt the comfort he had long sought. In that embrace, he found not only Amina but also a part of himself that he had thought lost. They then sat on the porch of the house, surrounded by the flowers and bright colors of the village. Amina spoke of her life, the years that had passed without news of him, but also of how she had always kept a vivid memory of the white child she had considered her own son. Alexander, in turn, confided in her, telling her about his career, his success, but also the sense of incompleteness, of detachment, as if he had lost a part of himself when he left that land. He told her how much he had missed her, how her love had marked him and shaped the man he had become. They spent hours talking, reminiscing about the past. Alexander was moved by the dignity and strength of this woman who had impacted him so profoundly. He realized how much she had influenced his life, teaching him values of love, patience, and resilience. Then, at the end of the day, Alexander revealed that he had come with a special gift for her. He took out an envelope and handed it to her. Amina, curious but not fully understanding, opened the envelope. Inside was a deed of ownership. Alexander had bought for her a large house with farmland in a nearby village, where she could live in dignity for the rest of her days. Not only was the house spacious and comfortable, but Alexander also announced that he had provided her with a monthly pension so that she would never lack for anything. Additionally, he had arranged for her children and grandchildren to receive a funded education. Amina was speechless. She had never imagined receiving such a gift, especially from the one she had raised with such simplicity and generosity, expecting nothing in return. Her hands trembled, and she looked at Alexander with tears of gratitude in her eyes. "You changed my life when I was a child," Alexander said softly. "Now, it's my turn to change yours." Amina cried silently, unable to say a word. Their reunion, after 30 years, was more than just an act of generosity. It symbolized a deep bond that had transcended time and borders. Amina, deeply moved, stared at the deed of ownership for a long time, trying to comprehend the magnitude of this gesture. For her, every moment spent with young Alexander had been an act of love, a simple response to the call of her heart, never expecting anything in return. She had never imagined that the child she had raised would become such a powerful man, but most of all, that he would remember her with so much gratitude and love. She took a moment to compose herself, her gaze fixed on Alexander. Her heart was overflowing with gratitude, but also a sense of humility. To her, what she had given to this child was nothing extraordinary. It was what a mother does for her child, giving everything she has, unconditionally. "I don't know what to say," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I never hoped for such a thing. You've already given me more than I could have imagined by just coming here today. These memories, these moments with you, that was all I needed." Alexander gently approached, taking Amina's hands in his. He could feel their roughness, the marks left by years of hard work, but also the warmth and strength that had always characterized them. "This is just a small way to thank you, Amina. You gave me so much more than a happy childhood. You taught me what true love, respect, and humility mean. Every success I've had, every milestone I've reached, I owe, in part, to you. You gave me the foundation on which I built my life." The villagers, drawn by this emotional scene, had gathered at a distance, watching with kindness. The story of this child-turned-prosperous businessman returning to honor his mother was already spreading. Some were murmuring prayers, others nodding their heads in respect. Amina smiled, a deep smile filled with wisdom. She gently squeezed Alexander's hands and said in a soothing voice, "It's not the money, nor the houses, that really matter, but the love we share. That, Alexander, you understand better than anyone." Alexander nodded, touched by her words. But he also knew that this gesture was his way of offering her a more comfortable future, without the hardships that old age might have brought. Amina would no longer have to worry about anything, neither for herself nor for her children and grandchildren. She could live in the peace and dignity she so deserved. As night fell, enveloping the village in a golden light, Alexander and Amina stayed a while longer, enjoying the peaceful silence of the countryside. Everything seemed simple again, like it used to be when life was marked by songs and the laughter of children. Before leaving, Alexander promised to return more often. This time, it was no longer a farewell, but simply a goodbye. A bond had been restored, stronger and deeper than before. Amina, still in tears but with a light heart, watched him walk away, knowing that she had found not just a son, but also peace of mind for the rest of her days. Alexander's journey, initially driven by business, had transformed into a quest for reconciliation, a return to his roots. By reconnecting with Amina, he had not only rekindled his past but had also rediscovered a part of himself he thought he had lost. And through this act of generosity, he had finally found the peace he had been searching for all these years. A few weeks had passed since Alexander returned to France. The meeting with Amina kept haunting his mind, not in a painful way, but as a sweet reminder of what he had rediscovered during his trip to Africa: the simplicity of love, the weight of memories, and the true meaning of success. Back in his luxurious office in Paris, surrounded by the incessant noise of phones, business meetings, and urgent emails, he realized that something had changed within him. The pressures of his international empire, once at the center of his life, now seemed secondary compared to what he had learned during his reunion with Amina. He realized that wealth, acquisitions, and mergers that he had so diligently pursued for decades were not as important as the human values he had rediscovered in the village. One day, as he gazed at the panoramic view of the city from his office, an idea blossomed within him. He thought of the land he had gifted to Amina and the other villagers. Africa, the continent that had seen him grow, had given him so much, and now he felt the need to give back to the land that had shaped him. He understood that his gesture toward Amina could be the beginning of something greater. He called his personal advisor, a man in his 50s, loyal to Alexander for decades. "Jean," said Alexander in a calm but determined voice, "I need your help to start a project. I want to invest in Africa, but not in the traditional way. I want it to benefit the people, the communities, create local opportunities, support education, training, and sustainable development. I want it to change lives, just as Amina changed mine." Jean, surprised by the idea but knowing Alexander's determination, nodded. "All right, Alexander. I'll start doing some research. Where would you like to begin?" Alexander thought for a moment and then smiled as he recalled the farmland he had given to Amina. "Let's start where it all began. Amina's village. I want this project to honor her name and memory. I want every child who grows up there to have the same opportunities one had. I want every woman to raise her children in dignity and without having to worry about tomorrow." It was the beginning of a new adventure for Alexander. It was no longer about amassing material goods or conquering new markets, but about investing in people, in the future of the next generations. Under his leadership, a development program was launched, including agricultural initiatives to encourage the self-sufficiency of villages, scholarships for young people, and vocational training centers for adults. A year later, Alexander returned to Africa to personally oversee the progress of the project. Upon his arrival in the village, he was greeted by smiles, songs, and dances. The village had already begun to change, and the hopeful, grateful faces of the residents were the greatest reward for him. Amina, still the same, stood back, watching with a proud smile. Alexander walked toward her, and this time, it was she who gently took his hands. "I knew you would do great things," she said softly. "But I'm even prouder to see that you're doing these great things with your heart." Alexander nodded, moved. "Everything I do now, it's thanks to you, Amina. You showed me what really matters in life." The two stood there, in silence, watching what was beginning to unfold around them. A new generation full of hope, a united community, and a more promising future for these lands rich in culture and humanity. This return to his roots, initially a pilgrimage of nostalgia, had transformed into a life mission for Alexander. He had found more than memories in this village. He had found a purpose in life, a connection to his past that helped light the way to the future. From that day forward, each success of Alexander's was no longer measured just by numbers and profits, but by transformed lives and revitalized communities. This new chapter of his life was opening up horizons he had never imagined, but which, in some way, seemed to have always been waiting for him. Months passed, and Alexander's project continued to grow, attracting the attention not only of the villagers, but also of local and international media. Stories of transformation, education, and sustainable development echoed positively, drawing investors and volunteers eager to get involved. The village, once isolated, was beginning to become a model of renewal for other communities. One day, while Alexander was on his way to a meeting with local leaders to discuss new initiatives, he was approached by a young girl playing with children in the yard of the newly built school. She ran toward him with a big smile, holding a colorful drawing. "Mr. Alexander, look at what I made." She handed him the drawing, a vibrant landscape with houses, trees, and children playing. "It's beautiful," Alexander said, touched by the innocence and joy of the child. "What does it represent?" "It's our village. And here's Amina. She teaches us to read and write every day. She says we can become whatever we want." At the mention of Amina, Alexander's heart tightened. He remembered her comforting words, the way she had always believed in him. "She's right," he continued with a smile. "You can be anything you want." The young girl's eyes sparkled with admiration, and she asked, "Are you going to stay here forever?" That question resonated deeply within him. Since his return, he had thought about his business in France, his responsibilities, but now, with this new generation and the ongoing projects, he realized his place was here. "I think I'll spend much more time here," he replied with conviction. "I want to see this village grow and prosper, just like you." After the meeting, Alexander found himself with Amina. They sat together under the large baobab tree, a majestic tree that had witnessed so many changes over the years. "You know, Amina," said Alexander, "there's something I wanted to ask you. Would you like to become the director of the educational program here?" Amina's eyes lit up, but she hesitated. "Alexander, I'm happy to see you succeed, but I'm just an old nanny." "No, don't say that," he interrupted.
"You're so much more than that."
"You're a pillar of this community, and your experience and love for these children are priceless. I know you could inspire entire generations." Amina was moved by the offer. The years had passed, but Amina's dream of raising the village's children by giving them a quality education, just as she had done for Alexander, could finally come true. "If I become director, I want it to be a place where the children not only learn to read and write but also love their roots, their culture, and believe in themselves," she said passionately. Alexander smiled, knowing that this dream was exactly what he had hoped for.
"Then it's a deal," he said.
"Together, we will make this school a place of learning, love, and hope." Over the months, Amina and Alexander worked hand in hand to develop an enriched educational program, integrating local traditions, arts, and African history. They organized workshops for parents, teaching them the importance of education and encouraging them to be more involved in their children's learning. One day, during an inauguration ceremony for the new school, the entire village gathered to celebrate. Alexander, with Amina by his side, spoke to the enthusiastic crowd. "What we've created here is not just a school," he said, "but a future for our children. A future where they can dream big and make those dreams come true." The applause echoed, and the children danced while singing traditional songs, celebrating their heritage while looking toward the future. After the ceremony, Alexander turned to Amina, his eyes shining with emotion. "I could never have done this without you," he said. "You're the reason all of this works." Amina, her heart overflowing with gratitude, replied, "We did this together, Alexander. This village is now our shared legacy." The seasons passed, and the village thrived under their leadership. The children, inspired by Amina and Alexander, began to excel in their studies, dreaming of a future that seemed within reach. As Alexander continued to juggle his business affairs in France and his commitment in Africa, he knew he had found a new purpose in life. Each trip back to the village brought him precious memories, enriching encounters, and a sense of fulfillment he had never known before. In the end, over the years, what Africa had given to Alexander, he gave back through every child who entered that school. By sharing his resources and investing in education, he helped build a bridge between his past and the future of the children, while honoring the memory of Amina, the one who had been a mother to him and who continued to guide the dreams of so many others. One day, while attending the graduation ceremony of the first student cohorts, Alexander stood beside Amina, amazed by the pride of the families and the enthusiasm of the children. Looking at the faces lit with hope and joy, He realized that true success was not only measured in financial terms, but in the lives they had touched and the dreams they had nurtured. In an emotional speech, Amina addressed the assembly. "What we have built here together is a testament to what love, patience, and perseverance can accomplish. Alexander, you believed in me and in our community. Thank you for bringing light into our lives." The applause echoed, and tears of joy and gratitude flowed down Alexander's face. He knew he had found his calling by giving back to those who had given him so much. Africa, which had seen him grow, had also shaped the man he had become. In the end, this journey of return, initially driven by nostalgia, had transformed into an act of redemption. Alexander had rediscovered not only his roots, but also the value of community, education, and unconditional love. By honoring Amina's memory, he had created a legacy that would endure, inspiring generations to come to believe in their dreams and build a better future. And so, Alexander Loron, the successful businessman, also became a pillar of his community, proving that sometimes, by giving back, one truly discovers who they are.